Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host, Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Geoff Collins is out at Georgia Tech. He has been fired. The up and up at Georgia Tech, they had a meeting on Sunday night, and they determined that Geoff Collins does not need to be the head coach at Georgia Tech any longer. He has been fired after his fourth game of his fourth season as head coach. Was this the right move by Georgia Tech, or should they have given him more time? Let's find out, in my opinion. Now, Geoff Collins, he was a defensive coordinator at Florida, and he was there for 2 years from 2015 to 2016, and then he got the Temple head coaching job in 2017. In his first season, he went 7-6 and 4-4 in the American. In 2018, he went 8-4 at Temple and went 7-1 in the American. And then Georgia Tech decided to hire Geoff Collins as the next head coach at Georgia Tech after Paul Johnson basically retired. And Paul Johnson at Georgia Tech always had an option style offense because he was the head coach at Navy, but you had Geoff Collins, and Geoff Collins wanted to do more of a spread offense. So he wanted to change Georgia Tech and make it to a more modern offense. And Georgia Tech thought that Geoff Collins would be the answer because he had a good record at Temple. He was 15-10 and 11-5 in conference play at Temple. But since going to Georgia Tech in his first season, he went 3-9 and 2-6 in the ACC, and that wasn't a good start. Wasn't very good, and they were like, okay, well, that's not great, but let's give him more time. So then the virus happened in 2020. And Georgia Tech went 3-7, and they went 3-6 in the ACC because they had an extra conference game because of the virus. And again, not an improvement. They haven't done any better. They did win an extra conference game, but that wasn't very good either. And then in 2021, Georgia Tech went 3-9 and 2-6 in conference play. So as you can see, there's no improvement. It's essentially the same record over and over again. There's no improvement. And unfortunately for Georgia Tech fans, Jamir Gibbs, their best player on the whole entire football team, a running back, transferred to Alabama. They couldn't keep him. I guess I'm not going to say it was just NIL was a factor, but Alabama is just a much more attractive place than Georgia Tech, and Jamir Gibbs is like, I'm out of here. And then to start this season, they were 1-3 and 0-1 in the ACC with losses 42-0 to Ole Miss, 41-10 to Clemson in a game that they actually were pretty tight with, and then one of their best defensive players for Georgia Tech got a targeting call, and he was ejected, and then they completely fell apart. They did beat Western Carolina 35-17, and that was actually interesting because Geoff Collins was a player at Western Carolina, so he beat his team that he played for. But then they lost to UCF on the road 27-10, and at that point it's like, okay, you can't beat UCF. And Gus Malzahn, he's a great coach and all that. He's from Auburn, but again, UCF, you should be able to beat UCF. You're Georgia Tech. You're the Power 5, and UCF look like the Power 5 school, which they're going to be joining the Big 12 really, really soon. And again, Georgia Tech looked like the Group of 5 team in this game. They lost 27-10. Jeff Sims at quarterback, he can't get it done for them. And Geoff Collins, there's just no end in sight with the losing. And Georgia Tech decided to get rid of him. He went 10-28 at Georgia Tech and 7-19 in conference play, and he's 25-3 as a head coach. But again, most of his wins were at Temple. He had 4 seasons. It was his 4th game into this season, and you can just tell that Georgia Tech is not going to turn this thing around. I don't like to see any coach get fired. I like to see any coach try to find a way to keep their job, but I don't blame Georgia Tech for firing Geoff Collins. It wasn't looking any good in the future. It wasn't looking any better, and they just decided that he's got to go. And even though, again, I would like to see any coach have more time, I do not blame Georgia Tech for firing Geoff Collins after going 10-28, 7-19 in conference play, no end in sight to the losing. You got to get a new coach in the future. They're going to have an interim coach. And now Geoff Collins is the 3rd coach fired after Herm Edwards and at Arizona State and Scott Frost in Nebraska. And hopefully for Georgia Tech fans, they can get a new coach that will start having them win again like they did under Paul Johnson. And hopefully for Geoff Collins, he can find another job doing what he loves, coaching football, probably as a coordinator. And hopefully for Georgia Tech, they can start winning in the future. Subscribe to the channel for more sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about Geoff Collins and Georgia Tech and whether he should have been fired or not. And I will see you next time.